Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Angus Report. It's our first ever episode on location at the Certified Angus Beef brand headquarters in Wooster, Ohio. It's an exciting time to be here at CAB, and we're going to give you an exclusive behind-the-scenes look around the brand's campus in the Buckeye State. Now over to Nicole Ursig, Producer Communications Specialist at Certified Angus Beef.
Hi, I'm Nicole Ursig with the Angus Report. This year marks the 40th anniversary of the Certified Angus Beef brand. On October 18, 1978, the first pound of CAB product was sold at Renzetti's IGA in Columbus, Ohio. That first pound would set the stage for what is now a brand known around the world. Brent Eicher, Senior Vice President at Certified Angus Beef, has been with the company for more than 30 years and tells us about his long history with the brand.
So Certified Angus Beef, when I started back in 1987, was tiny. We had a little rented office space up in West Salem. I think there was about 7 or 8 employees, and we could all sit and have lunch together at the same table, and it was tiny compared to what we see today. It was all about just being given opportunities, and I guess maybe myself not knowing what I couldn't do, and so jumping in and trying it.
As the Olympic athletes go for the gold in Salt Lake City, the Stars and Stripes and the Olympic flag fly proudly over the world headquarters of Certified Angus Beef in Wooster.
We were approached by a gentleman that had our Certified Angus Beef hot dog, and he was a part of the Olympic committee, the food committee, and their goal was to come out and find some of the best food for the Olympics.
CAB is the only beef being served at the Winter Games, except at McDonald's. And the folks in Wooster say nobody has to ask, where's the beef?
They said, look, we would like you to donate the product to this Olympic Games, but we're not looking for that $50 million check. And so truly we were able to run with some of the biggest brands in the world on a budget that this little nonprofit of Certified Angus Beef could afford.
When you're at an Olympic event and you're hungry, who takes care of you? I found one hard-working Olympic sponsor that takes their job very seriously. The people of Certified Angus Beef.
Organizers thought 400,000 Usinger Angus beef franks would be quite enough to feed the athletes and the audiences throughout the games. But their estimates didn't cut the mustard, and the specially ordered hot dogs in Salt Lake City have been eaten already. Wisconsin-based Usinger's famous sausage is scrambling to make more. Another 200,000 dogs are expected to arrive by Monday.
It was called the sold out Frank of the games, and they had pictures of people in line waiting for these hot dogs, and literally the air freighting of the hot dogs showed up within just hours of them being out. So while we never ran out, it was just a really cool story, and being able to predict that it was going to happen just in enough time to be able to fulfill that order and make the decision that I was going to spend $40,000 on hot dogs, and that if I was wrong, we were going to be eating a lot of hot dogs, but if I was right, I was going to save the Olympic Games from being out of hot dogs. So we got all this kind of free publicity that we never even expected, and it spoke to the quality of the product, that people actually were excited to try Certified Angus Beef at the games.
Certified Angus Beef. Certified Angus Beef.
Sharon Swanson, Brand Assurance Manager, was one of the first hires at CAB. Swanson has served in various roles over her 32-year tenure, but she's always been focused on protecting and maintaining the integrity of the brand. We sat down with the veteran employee to look back at the brand's evolution.
Mick Colvin hired me. I knew Mick for many years. I just lived down the road from him where the original office was. Mick had brought me in for an interview and basically asked me 3 questions of how fast can you type, how much would you like to make, and when can you start? And I told him I could start right away. We worked in what was a Catholic church in the town of West Salem, and it still had the confessional, and we used for our storage, actually used the bathtub for our storage of paper and stuff that we used for our computer at that time. So it was very small. I basically worked upstairs for a few years, and then we actually did add on to the back because we continued to grow with staff. I started out as being kind of like a secretary, and then evolved into the brand assurance role. And the first computer, I guess you could say, was a typewriter, a Smith Corona typewriter that we had to work with. And we worked with carbon papers and letters and stuff, and that's what we kept. And then we worked into a computer, our very first computer, which I think at the time was between $10,000 and $20,000 for that computer. So I guess as you look over the time, you know, it's really been a large part of my life. It's with great joy. I feel that, you know, this product is still available. It's still out there. It continues to grow. The strength of it continues to grow, and the team continues to grow. And it's been a real pleasure to have been a part of that and the success of the program.
Certified Angus Beef President John Sticka got his start with the brand nearly 20 years ago. Under his leadership, the brand has seen tremendous success. We visited with Sticka to discuss the brand's rich history and vision for the future.
Well, I started at Certified Angus Beef in 1999. Came right out of graduate school, so this was the first place that I ever came to. I remember when I got here, we're in the process of celebrating 25 years. It was a milestone. I'm not sure I ever thought about 40 years. What it means to me is something that was shared with me by Mick Colvin when I first got here. Mick made the comment that Certified Angus Beef is an overnight success that's taken decades to build. And at that time, we were talking 2.5 decades. Today, we're talking 4 decades, and I think we still continue to achieve growth and success as a beef community that we're proud to be a part of. But what it means to me is hopefully we've got another 40 years in us that's only going to yield even more exciting results that benefit rural America and those raising Angus cattle. You know, we're going to continue to grow. I guess as I look at the next 40 years, growth is a part of that. Our goal is to drive equity, drive value, drive relevance as a brand. And when I started here, international was a very viable component of our business, but not necessarily a part of what we thought about every day. Today, out of 1 billion pounds, international's 175 million of it, and it's been the biggest component of our growth the last 2 years. And right now, it's a big part of our growth here in 2018. And so the scope of the consumers that we touch continues to increase. When we talk about impacting consumers, it's not just consumers here in Wooster or Des Moines or St. Joe, it's consumers around the world. And so as the audience gets bigger, our voice needs to get louder, our resources need to get broader, just to make sure that we're continuing to tell the message and continue that drumbeat of quality that's allowed this brand to be successful and deliver on our mission of increasing demand for registered Angus cattle.
From an idea to a global brand, Certified Angus Beef is a testament to what can be accomplished by a group of dedicated Angus producers with a vision. Certified Angus Beef's 144 employees are hard at work to make sure that when beef is what's for dinner, Certified Angus Beef is the best choice. Up next, we take you from pasture to plate to show you how CAB tracks every pound of branded product through the production chain.
The Certified Angus Beef brand has never bought, owned, or sold any cattle. In fact, the only thing the brand owns is the logo. That doesn't mean they don't monitor sales, product quality, or number of heads certified. We talked to Clint Wallencheck, Director of Packing, to learn how the brand tracks what product makes it into a CAB box.
Probably one of the most common questions we receive from the production side would be, how do I get my herd certified? The focus on genetics and managing those genetics is very, very critical, but even the best genetics and management programs, those cattle still have to come to the packing plant and go through that certification process. As we look at the reason that many black animals or Angus and Angus cross animals don't qualify for the program, quite frankly, marbling becomes one of the #1 things, so quality grade at the end of the day. The general process to identify and certify cattle that meet the requirements for Certified Angus Beef is primarily done through our relationship with USDA. So USDA being that independent third party on the meat grading side that evaluate each and every carcass that meets the live animal requirements to evaluate whether or not they meet the 10 carcass specifications. Once that is completed and USDA has in fact agreed that, that an animal meets those requirements and is certified into the program, then it's really just a math game. We know that every animal produces 2 ribeyes, 2 strip loins, 2 tenderloins, and so forth. So then on a weekly basis, those packer partners would report those sales to us. And so it makes it really convenient to be able to track 100 head of cattle equals 200 ribeyes, and then we can just do the math from there. That in conjunction with the packaging and labeling requirements that our packer partners have to identify the brand on the individual vacuum packaging as well as the box itself, allows that product to maintain its identity as it goes through commerce. For our fiscal year 2018, we are expecting to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 4.8, potentially even 5 million head of certified carcasses. Compare that to 5 or 6 years ago, and that would have been roughly 3.5 million head. And so again, the rebuilding of the herd and the overall numbers, the increased use of Angus genetics, and the improvement in performance on how those cattle ultimately grade out at the plant has really been a boon for us from an overall availability and supply standpoint on head count.
Something as valuable as the Certified Angus Beef brand needs to be protected. Amanda Barstow, Director of Brand Assurance, explains how her team makes sure the brand's integrity is never compromised.
We've been called often the beef police, and really our role is to protect the brand, to ensure that it remains a valuable element for not only Certified Angus Beef, but also all of our licensees, and that consumers can maintain trust in the brand. So we do audit regularly. We audit over 5,000 restaurants a month, every month, to ensure that they are buying the items they're advertising as Certified Angus Beef. An audit in general can be anything from walking into a restaurant or a retail store and looking at the case display and making sure the marks are used correctly, making sure they have enough product in the case, and that they're actually then looking at their purchase information to ensure that they actually bought enough product to fill that entire case. If we don't protect the brand, then that's all Certified Angus Beef owns as an entity. That's our intellectual property. While we own buildings and vehicles and lots of office supplies, we don't own anything else tangible besides the brand trademarks or the intellectual property. And so if we didn't take time to protect that, we wouldn't have a program.
The CAB logo has tremendous industry respect and is recognized by more than 95% of beef consumers, according to market research. Along the beef production chain, the logo increases profitability for licensed packers, distributors, restaurants, and retailers. Next on the Angus Report, we take you to where the magic happens, CAB's state-of-the-art Culinary Center. Stay tuned, back with the Angus Report after this.
Hi, I'm Allie Ludy with the Angus Report. Unveiled in 2012, Certified Angus Beef's Culinary Center is a place of innovation and discovery. The culinary team shares their expertise with visitors, demonstrating creative ways to cook cuts of beef. And the chefs here certainly won't let you leave hungry.
I'm actually born and raised in Wooster, Ohio. I wanted to be a chef forever, so right out of high school, I moved down to Orlando, Florida to start school at Le Cordon Bleu Culinary College. While attending school, I met Gordon Ramsay, and he actually wanted to put me on a TV show he was doing at the time called MasterChef. So I landed a spot on that show, which took me out to Los Angeles, and then I ended up staying in Los Angeles for about 4 years. I graduated from the Cordon Bleu in Hollywood and moved back home to work for the Certified Angus Beef brand about 5 years ago. At the Culinary Center with Certified Angus Beef, we love kind of giving everybody a full beef experience when they come to the center. The first thing I learned when I was hired by Certified Angus Beef was that using the whole animal is so important. I really feel like we owe it to the animal. We love what this animal gives us, and we love what the ranchers do all over the place for us. And it's only proper that we try and find a way to make everything as enjoyable as a New York strip steak or a ribeye. There's not a lot of utilization and creativity out there with beef unless it's coming from us. So it's really important that we take pride in what we do, and we take pride in where it starts, and where it starts is the most important. Being from a small town really kind of played to my favor a couple years ago when I was found on social media by Food Network as the beef maven. So they call me the meat maven on social media, and they wanted to put me on the show called Chopped. So I bravely accepted the challenge to compete on Chopped, and what they allowed me to do was talk about the brand. And it was really, really special to be able to kind of represent us and our community out there grilling a really good piece of beef. I'm really proud to have worn the logo and been able to talk about Certified Angus Beef on Food Network.
It's been less than a decade, but the center is growing demand for the best Angus beef. And under the leadership of Dee Wallencheck, Director of Marketing Education at Certified Angus Beef, the center has evolved into a hub for beef innovation.
The idea for our Culinary Center came from our Masters of Brand Advantages program. We had launched the program. It's a 3-week training program, and 1 whole week is focused on meat cuts. And we were actually hosting it at Ohio State University. And while we were there, we knew that the program was going to have a lot of momentum and a lot of great return on investment. And we just had the idea, instead of packing up and renting a facility, what if we held and found a facility in Wooster where we could bring the experience and bring our customers to Wooster and then be able to expose them to a lot more of the experts that we have on staff at Certified Angus Beef versus just 2 or 3 that were maybe able to travel off-site. And next thing you know, we bought a restaurant and turned it into a culinary center. When customers visit the Education and Culinary Center, they get a really cool experience. We want to make sure that they have the chance to be hands-on and experience our product so they can step into the meat lab and do some cutting with our meat scientists. They can cook alongside of our chefs. They can taste, sample, learn about our cuts. We break it down to the numbers. What is the profitability of each item? Here we make the product as the focal point. And if a customer can go home with 2 or 3 new ideas on how they can keep beef competitively on the menu, maybe they can add beef to an appetizer section, to a lunch section where they didn't have it before. The Culinary Center is just at its 6th birthday or 6th anniversary, and I think the things that have evolved the most is our experience. When we first opened the center, we knew that we were going to break down some sides of beef. I don't know that we even knew how critical that experience would be to what people wanted to get out of their time here. Since we opened, we started with a really small meat lab area. We built on, expanded, and have our own dedicated meat lab, which allows us to have just a lot more interaction. We can have 6 sides of beef and 20 people breaking down some sides. It gets kind of crazy, but it's a lot of fun. The more cuts we can sell, the more demand that we can create, the more dollars ultimately that we can drive back to the Angus ranchers that are raising this product every day.
At the Culinary Center, no 2 days are the same. You never know who may be in for a visit. Baton Rouge chef and Cajun cuisine expert John Foles is here for the first time to learn from the CAB culinary team.
So what you learn here is you kind of get a slap in the face gently to say, wow, I didn't really think about that. Or when you start to take that prime rib off and I think to myself, why hadn't I used that on my menus in a while? Or when they say they see the trimmings coming off of the brisket and they talk about braising that or grinding it or corning it. I said, wow, that's a technique I probably should use. How can you present something really beautifully on the plate that we can make money on? Well, we don't have to sell primal cuts. They sell themselves. But when my customers are asking me to take ground meat, underutilized cuts, braising methods, and creating beautiful dishes, they're all looking for the same thing. Quality product, well presented at low cost. What better place to find it than right here? I was really pleased today to see a whole animal, because today it's so distressing to know that most people don't know where meat cuts come from. We've been removed from this process for so many years that this is really the only place you can get it. Culinary schools aren't teaching this, but yet to come here and talk to experts about not only how to cut it, but how's the animal raised. Not only the humane approach to it, but the quality. So I wish every chef, I wish every owner, I wish every CEO who has anything to do with restaurants and concerned about quality and education of staff, I wish they could get a ticket here.
The Certified Angus Beef Culinary Center is a playground for beef education and innovation among chefs and butchers. Carson Rogers, brand production and quality specialist, talks about the educational opportunities the lab provides.
We'll have chefs come in that are very, we'll call it traditional, and so they know a few cuts, and that's their bread and butter. And when we really start to branch out and show them some alternative, cheaper, but it's not reinventing the wheel, it's just another way of cutting the wheel, I guess you could say. And so by showing them some alternative methods, they can increase their margin while decreasing their cost. And it's really cool for them to get those creative juices going again when they come in here kind of dulled down and think, there's only a tenderloin or there's only a ribeye. Now we're starting to show them things that they, it's like they just got out of culinary school again. They're really branching out and want to try some new and creative things, especially with our chef staff here and our culinary staff presenting some of these things on the menu day to day. They really get to experience and see that plated up and know it does work and it can taste good. We can create more demand and more premium for these carcasses by more carcass utilization. And so by doing so, by showing some of these alternative cuts, we can increase utilized pounds per carcass, thus increasing premiums across the whole beef spectrum for Certified Angus Beef.
The work done here in the Meat Lab and the Culinary Center helped to drive demand for Angus beef. And with today's cattle supply numbers, cattlemen depend on growing demand. To learn more about the Certified Angus Beef brands, visit blackinkWithCAB.com.
We hope you enjoyed this week's special edition of the Angus Report, and we'll return next week at this time for more cattle news and highlights. But in the meantime, you can watch more segments from Angus TV at angus.org, where you can also subscribe to the industry's leading publication, Angus Journal. Thanks for joining us.